so hot, I gotta pay. 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 I can end it upgrade. Your place on fire, let's get higher. I'm gonna set your place on fire, let's get higher. Put a little bit of shit, put a little bit of shit, put a little bit of shit. I'ma make it burn, I'ma make it burn, I'ma make it burn, I'ma make it burn, I'ma make it burn,
And we are live. oh 07's the chat. Got to give an oh 07 for the thumbnail. What is up, y'all? You are watching The Barracks, non-Euclidean news network for a multipolar world. I am your host, Teray Nasheed, flying it solo today. And, as such, I made sure to pull up a lot of clips talking about the United Auto Workers strike going on in 3 different states, in Michigan, in Ohio, and there's one other state that the strike is going on in, but they are targeting 3 different auto manufacturers to wrest concessions from the automotive industry that has been screwing over one of the last vestiges of manufacturing in this country. So we're going to talk about it. And make sure to share this stream if you're watching on Twitter X, if you're watching on YouTube, whichever channel you're watching it on, share it up. Thank you all for tuning in. Yes, oh 07s, thank you. MJNT Imperialist Party. MJNT Imperialist Party says, I've been out of the loop. I need the underground barracks political update. MJ, are you in any of the barracks chats? We got plenty of underground chats on X. We've got a Discord. We're going to get you in the loop. Don't you worry. Yes. While we are waiting for people to come in the room, as we are waiting for people to like the goddamn video, because I see that there is often 15, 16 people in some of these videos, but we're not getting, and then afterwards when the stream closes down, we get 4 times that many in the next few days, but we don't see that many likes on the video. Make sure to hit that like button. I apologize for starting half an hour late. I had to plan for my smoke break because, as you know, if you talk to me long enough, tobacco is good for you. Nicotine, also good for you. Caffeine, good for you. I got my green tea because when you get, when you're getting off of the smoke break, nothing like getting your caffeine fix at 8:30 in the evening. So what y'all smoking in the comments? Tell me. I'm a cigar man myself. I would be doing my father a disservice if I weren't smoking the finest Cuban cigars before coming live. I don't do that, so I am doing him a disservice. I just make sure to get cigarillos for 50 cents a piece loose at the smoke shop, as you do when you're from the South. American Spirits, nice. I had to stop smoking American Spirits after I graduated from university. The crowd I was hanging with was an American Spirits crowd. And I don't hang with the art hose and the sensitive anarchist queers anymore. Not to say that you're a sensitive anarchist queer or an art hoe. Sorry to stealth diss you like that. I'm just saying I don't smoke American Spirits anymore. But we will get into the news because we have a lot of clips to play for you today. The ruling class on all fronts is instigating a class war, as we have not seen for many years, because the United Auto Workers Union represents a section of the working class in this country. What's left of the manufacturing base is almost entirely represented by automotive workers, 60% of whom are unionized. So this is a very important event going on during an election cycle. So we have plenty of clips pulled up to be able to see what the Democratic regime, what the think tank spooks, what the private ownership class are saying in order to justify their class war. And we're going to be combating these vicious lies. Yes, flying it solo today. So and coming off of a sickness. I woke up sick a few days ago, but I'm battling it like a champ. I made sure to pop some Zyrtec and Tylenol cold and flu before hopping live. As the intro music was playing, I made sure to get good and drugged up. Got to make sure to get my Tylenol, nicotine, caffeine fix. Because when you sleep 4 hours a night and working 55 hours a week, on top of bringing y'all the stream you know and love, you gotta take your working class boost. Yes, flying it solo. Hey, default. Thank you for joining. So, officially, just the other day, the auto workers of the Ford plant in, I believe it was in Michigan, 600 workers at this plant were fired in response to the United Auto Workers strike taking place in 3 different states across the country in the Rust Belt of the United States. This was just a day after the strike had started, so already we are seeing massive pushback from the most from the largest, most profitable automotive industries, some of the largest, most profitable companies in this country, just 24 hours after the strike began. But I have a clip pulled up here. We have some CNN foot soldier on the front lines of the strike, making sure to interview one of the strike leaders. And I think it's valuable to look at this clip to be able to see the misdirection that liberals will use in order to seem like they are sympathizing with the working class. Biden himself calls himself the most pro-union president in U.S. history, which is obviously a crock of BS. But nonetheless, that Rust Belt sentiment that Biden likes to push, him calling himself, the most pro-union president, describing his upbringing from, was it Scranton, Pennsylvania, one of those Rust Belt towns. It's an effective misdirection, as he claims with one hand to support unions and the working class, and with the other to beat back the gains of the working class and make illegal their right to strike, their right to fight for the gains that they produce in these factories. As we all know, Biden was the one who made it illegal for the rail workers who started a strike a couple of months ago, made it illegal for them to strike in an unprecedented move, an unprecedented attack against working class organization that we haven't seen in decades. We have not seen that kind of attack on the right to strike since Reagan. But here we have some clips from the front lines. This came out just a couple of hours ago. This is from CNN. Top mouthpiece for the liberal uniparty.
Doesn't seem like we're nearing a deal at this point. Look, it is day 2. We are hearing a lot of energy from these folks chanting, cheering. I actually want to bring in Derek here. Derek is, you are the strike captain. Is that right for this group?
That is correct.
Of all the factories, plants across the country that have been selected for this initial tactical strike, you guys were one of them. What was your reaction when you heard that news?
I felt that Mr. Fain did a good job hitting them with their moneymaker here. The Wrangler is one of the highest profitable vehicles in the company, and he's showing them that he's serious.
You're talking about the Jeeps that are made here,
Correct.
about 1,000 a day. They are back at the bargaining table today. Your leadership, along with the automakers, we have heard strong words from both sides. What's your message for the union leadership today as they head back to the bargaining table, speaking for so many of the members here?
We stand behind you guys. We like the demands the union has, and we are out here supporting, and we feel that that's what we Sir.
And what is the frustration you think after months of negotiation, it's led to this? What are the biggest points of frustration do you think that members are feeling right now that led to this moment in this strike?
Our pay has not kept up with inflation, and our temps are being abused here. We have temps that have been here 6 years with no benefit. They no guarantee time to full time. Our pay is not on par with the price of everything else going up in the country. So,
And we heard the CEO of Ford say if they gave in to all of the union's demands, it would bankrupt the company. What do you make of that?
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
So I feel they've showed record profits, and we deserve a record contract. That's our stance.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and
Thank
good
you.
luck. So as you can hear, guys, day 2, it'll be interesting to see if any progress is made up in Michigan.
They have record profits. So we demand record contracts. Let me know what you think. That seems pretty reasonable to me. And that was manufacturers of the Jeep Wrangler. Yeah, these, there's about less than 2,000 strikers so far, 2 days into this UAW strike. But the strike leaders have specifically targeted the most productive, the most profitable of cars, one of them being the Jeep Wrangler, in order to really hit the owners of these factories, to hit the private capitalist class where it hurts. And that's the thing that really we should always keep at the forefront of our minds, just how reasonable the demands of these strikers are. As much as we'll get it, and I'll keep playing the clip, as much as snakes in the media, as much as members of Congress in the deep state, as much as they want to sort of use a smoke and mirrors and intellectual jibber jabber to say that the demands of the strikers are unreasonable, and however they describe it, at the end of the day, they're describing it as unreasonable. We need to remember that it is not just reasonable, it's not just possible, it is the right of the working class in this country to demand record contracts. So I'll keep playing the clip here. So we'll hear from, so now that we heard from the reasonable, rational working class, let's hear what the snakes in the media have how say to spin this.
That bargaining table between the union and the automakers. But for now, look, so many of these workers have told me that they prepared for this. They were told months, even years ago, that a strike could be coming at some point. They should be saving their money. Not easy to do if you are living paycheck to paycheck, as some people have told me they are, but still, they knew a strike could be coming, and so many have said they are ready to do this for as long as it takes. Victor, Amara?
Oh, let's hope it doesn't take too long. Gabe Cohen, appreciate your reporting. Thank you. Let's go now to CNN White House reporter Kevin Liptak. Kevin, we heard from President Biden yesterday, just hours after the thousands of workers walked out. It sounded like President Biden, he stopped just short of endorsing the strike, but he did seem to show his support for those workers.
Yeah, very forcefully coming out on the side of the unions. And that was notable because as these talks have proceeded over the last several months, President Biden and the White House have avoided taking an explicit side in all of this, really hoping that the auto workers and the automakers could come to some sort of agreement. But that all changed in the Rose.
To be clear, Biden has taken a side. He took a side months ago when he made it illegal for the railroad workers to strike. He was siding with the interests of Wall Street, with finance monopoly. And often he will say it outright. But again, just because a liberal says something with a smile doesn't mean they aren't waiting to stab you in the back as soon as they get the opportunity.
Roosevelt room yesterday, the president coming out and saying that record profits for these automakers must translate into record contracts for the workers who he has said had seen their wages eroded over the past several years, as well as their benefits. Now, listen to a little bit more of what the president had to say.
No one wants a strike. Say it again. No one wants a strike. But I respect workers' right to use their options under the collective bargaining system. They've been around the clock.
I'm pretty sure the strikers want to strike. No, I'm pretty sure the 1,400 strikers, I think they want to strike. You're talking to, Mr. President, the stockholders, many of whom are in Congress, who don't want to see their returns take a dip.
And the companies have made some significant offers. But I believe they should go further to ensure record corporate profits mean record contracts for the UAW.
Now, this strike is really coming at the intersection of so many important priorities for President Biden, really striking at the heart of his political identity. Of course, he's referred to himself as the most pro-union president in history, and a key part of his economic agenda is boosting wages for the middle class. But at the same time, he has the imperative of maintaining a strong economy, and certainly this strike, if it goes on for a while, could have serious effects nationwide. You also see the president's push to transition to electric vehicles really coming into play here. One of the key sticking points for the auto workers is ensuring that that transition to electric vehicles comes with good wages, the same number of jobs for auto workers. And of course, you have to play into this the electoral politics of Michigan. Of course, it's a key battleground state. The president is still pursuing an endorsement from the UAW. Now, he did say yesterday that he was dispatching two key aides, Gene Sperling and the acting labor secretary, Julie Su, to Detroit to try.
So, like I said, what he said was important there is that that Biden is looking for an endorsement from the United Auto Workers Union, specifically because the major difference between the railroad strike that happened a couple of months ago and this strike is that in the United States, automotives is the vast majority of manufacturing jobs, of working class jobs in the country. Since we are mostly a service economy, it's upwards of 80% of our GDP comes from goods and services provided, not including the parasitic forms of profit generation that we add into the GDP, things like rent, insurance, stock buybacks. It's mostly a services economy. So that rapidly shrinking chunk that represents actual real economic GDP in commodities production is automotives. So Biden at least has to pay lip service to the lie that he spreads that he is the most pro-union president in the United States.
And get these support these two sides, but it does remain to be seen how much effect they'll have as these talks continue, guys.
Kevin Liptak for us in Washington. Thank you. Joining me now is Michigan Democratic Representative Debbie Dingell, of course, representing Michigan. You are the exact right person to talk to this morning. Thanks for being with us. Let me start here. I understand that you spoke with Shawn Fain, president of the UAW. What can you tell us about what we should expect as we go into this first negotiation since the start of the strike, and if there's any momentum toward one another?
So good morning, guys. I have been talking to Shawn Fain from the day that he was sworn in as president. Fact of the matter is I gave one of the keynotes at the bargaining convention, which opened the day after he became president. I have been talking to these auto workers for months, and I know what's on their mind. He has been very clear. I heard him from day one. As you know, I've been telling people I thought there was a very strong chance of a strike. And he was very clear after he got elected that he would target all three companies, which I think nobody took seriously until this past week. And he's very clear on what needs to be done, or what the workers want. They gave up COLA in 2008 and 2009. In real wages of what they were making in 2008 and 2009, they're 10% behind what that meant then. They need an increase in their pay. People are working on the assembly line doing this.
This is your representation as a working class American, by the way. This decrepit lizard person wearing a pearl necklace in front of paintings of British Guard. This is your representation, by the way. Someone who says, "Oh, we need to raise the minimum wage. We need to raise the wage to $20 an hour." Yeah, right. Yeah, I think those are Palace Guard, not British Redcoats, but I'm pretty sure those are Palace Guard. But yeah, this is your representation if you are working class in America. It is someone who is this lizard wearing the makeup of a Las Vegas whore and a $50,000 pearl necklace, who says that we just need to raise the minimum wage. We need to have wages increase from they weren't increasing fast enough from 2008 when Obama bailed out General Motors. Again, we're seeing a pattern here with automotives being a major hit to the economy. They know that a strike to America's last linchpin in the real economy would be devastating, including for the financier class, who wouldn't be able to buy back stocks in all of the other sectors of the economy without that keystone of American manufacturing. But yeah, no, we don't want just a $20 minimum wage. We don't want just a pay increase. What was her name? Debbie? We don't want a pay increase, Debbie. We want ownership of that factory. We want full dictatorship, Debbie. We're coming for the whole pie, Debbie.
Same job, and they're being paid at very different tiers. They want job security, and we're at a crossroads.
We don't just want job security, Debbie. We want dictatorship. We want to be able to chain the private banksters, the financiers, the renters, the landlords. We want to chain them to a set of golden handcuffs, just like Henry Ford did at the turn of the century, and say, "You want to make millions? You want to make millions off of our backs? You better give us full control of this factory, Debbie. We make the decisions. We decide what kind of cars get made, how they get made, when they get made, who they get sold to, and how much we charge. We make that decision, Debbie. How many hours we want to work. We're coming for all of it, Debbie. Screw your job security. You should be begging for job security. You should be begging us on the factory line, the machine operators, lathe operators, those who are working the kiln. You should be begging us for job security. Debbie, Deborah, Miss Dingle.
You talked about it earlier, a minute ago, when you talk about this transition from internal combustion engine to electric vehicles. There are a lot of issues here.
So COLA being cost of living adjustment, just for folks who aren't keeping up with the acronyms, we want to make sure that they're on board as well.
All right.
So that's all right. I got you. I'll catch it if you drop one. Listen, you said that you've known for months there was a good chance of a strike, but it was around Labor Day when President Biden said he didn't think there would be one. Let me ask you about this reporting from Politico today. After that happened, UAW President Shawn Fain, Representative Debbie Dingell, and others were marching at a Labor Day parade in Detroit when they learned of Biden's comments. Dingell would later tell Fain that she called longtime Biden advisor Steve Ricchetti and screamed at him over the comment. According to a person familiar with the talk and granted anonymity to discuss details, "Are you out of your effing minds?" Dingell said, per the person. First, the
sweet old lady. The sweet old lady said the F word. You guys. I didn't know. I didn't know that Debbie was willing to swear for the working class. I didn't know. I take back all my comments. You know, she really fights for the working class. We get we get slightly more crumbs from the table of the masters, and our handlers are willing to swear for us. That's so that she just gets us. Miss Dingle, I apologize for all of the sardonic things I said. You really are the representative of the ruling class. Folks, this is all sarcasm here. Fuck Deborah Dingle. Fuck the union leadership that we have in this country, the union reps that we have. I do admire the strike leader who was interviewed at the beginning of that clip, because the faith that the working class have that they will see gains, that they will be reconciled with the fruits of their labor. That kind of faith keeps you going. But what they need is faith in a different kind of leadership, in a communist, Marxist-Leninist leadership, such as they have in China, where factory workers have full dictatorship over their labor, over the fruits of their labor, getting health care for free, housing for free. They tell the government when to open up factories and when to shut down, when hospitals get built. That's the kind of power that the working class in this country needs and deserves. So I have another clip pulled up here again from CNN, because when we think of what the next ruling class psyop is going to be, what the next justification for class warfare is going to be, it's good to hear it straight from the largest organs of the ruling class mouthpieces, CNN, New York Times. So here's another CNN clip, this time from, this is just full commentary. I'm not going to play the whole thing because I just want to get to the most important bit about halfway through. CNN brings on a so-called business expert. They always bring in experts on CNN to be able to talk down to you about how you should feel about the most important events of our time. And can we just appreciate for a second how everyone who works for CNN looks like a robot with human skin pulled over its cold shell. These dead-eyed freaks working for CNN, the Clinton News Network. So yeah, this is CNN bringing on one of the Scott Galloway, who's a marketing professor at NYU, the NYU School of Business. One of these hucksters that people on Twitter like to pretend is some sort of like scientist, an economic scientist. So let's break apart some of these. Lies, shall we?
Tumult in a variety of industries all across the country. First, negotiations are expected to resume today in the strike by the 145,000-member United Autoworkers against General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis. Only 13,000 have stopped work so far. They staged select walkouts at plants in Missouri, Michigan, and Ohio, with threats of more to follow. It's the first time in UAW history that it has struck all three of America's unionized automakers at once. As CNN reports, the companies offered to raise hourly wages as much as 20% over the 4-year contracts, which would have taken the senior-most workers to a base pay of more than $80,000 a year, not including overtime or profit-sharing bonuses. But the union is demanding 40% during the life of the contract and seeks to reverse concessions that it made back when GM and Chrysler faced bankruptcy and needed federal bailouts in order to survive. The highest paid of the big three.
That's a number I want y'all to remember as we continue with this stream. 40% increases in pay. The ruling class, and this has been true for almost 200 years, the ruling class likes to use percentages. They'll just throw percentages at you to make it seem like a high number. But if you are a studious Marxist, as we here in the Barracks are, and we can easily tear apart these smoke and mirrors to seem like the demands for working class gains are unreasonable. 40%. Remember that number. We're going to come back to that.
CEOs, GM Mary Barra made $29 million last year. That's 362 times the median worker's paycheck. The other two had similarly proportioned compensation. By comparison, in 1965, CEOs typically earned just 20 times the typical worker's pay in their industries, according to the Economic Policy Institute. President Biden has voiced his support for the union.
There's another ratio, by the way. 20 times the rate of pay for the worker, 50, 100 times the rate of pay, without actually discussing the base level of value for the wage. More smoke and mirrors. Remember these ratios. Remember these percentages. 40%, 20 times the rate of pay.
Record profits have not been shared fairly, in my view, with those workers. Workers deserve a fair share of the benefits they help create for an enterprise. Bottom line is that auto workers help create America's middle class. They deserve a contract that sustains them in the middle class.
Meanwhile, the Writers Guild of America has been on strike since May, joined in July by the Actors Guild. It's the first time that they've joined forces on the picket line since 1960. Both unions contend that their pay has gone down dramatically while corporate profits.
Yeah, notice, I'm not sure if y'all have been on Twitter. Did you notice that an uptick in conversation about the writer's strike, the Hollywood useless writer's strike of perverts, layabouts, brain dead so-called artists, how an uptick in that conversation has been happening on Twitter at the same time as the United Autoworkers strike has been going on, to lump these two polar opposite events together as the same struggle. That's another act of class warfare, implying that these useless, lazy, disgusting Hollywood parasites have anything in common with the United Auto Worker, with the 600 Ford factory workers who were fired just the other day for daring to strike, for making this country great, for being the backbone of the American economy. Not some Netflix writer, some Netflix producer, some worthless Hollywood actor who is leeching off of that productivity, off of that greatness, and producing nothing worthwhile, just remaking the same show over and over again, the same woke garbage, the same rehashed, boring filth, degenerate filth, the same pornography, the same race baiting, the same nonsense, the same propaganda to lull you to sleep, demanding that they get the same representation as the Ford factory worker. Fuck the Hollywood writers' strike.
And CEO compensation have boomed. The strikes have brought production of film and TV in America to a near standstill. But a poll last month showed that 67% of Americans supported the strikes. This week, TV hosts Drew Barrymore and Bill Maher announced they're going to start making shows without writers. In other fields, more than 60,000 healthcare workers in California, Oregon, and Washington just.
I do not support the Hollywood writers' strike. I want to fire everyone in Hollywood. You should want to fire everyone in Hollywood and make them work in the coal mines in Appalachia until them and their children get 7 generations of black lung. Have them work for their paycheck. Have them work to put food on the table. Let them know what it's like. Send them off to the Yukon to be able to harvest lumber. Send them to the oil fields in the Gulf of Mexico. Fire them all. They should not earn a penny for the garbage that they are putting on our laptops and our televisions. Yes, I am advocating for slavery of the parasite class. I want to not just. You're right. You're right, T1000. You know what? I am advocating for slavery. I want to enslave the parasite class. We should be throwing them in prison. We should be taking a page out of Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador. We should be taking a page out of his handbook and throwing every one of these parasites in jail. Yes, I do think that the degenerates in Hollywood deserve just as much jail time as the members of MS-13. They push as much degenerate filth on the population. They're just as dangerous, and they're just as implicit in human trafficking. I want to enslave those parasites. So thank you for pointing that out. We don't want to mince any words here at the Barracks. Enslave the Hollywood blue-haired, worthless, fat producers, writers, actors. Throw their guilds into the garbage and throw them in a cell and lock them up forever. But let's continue watching the clip here now that we've made our point clear.
Just voted to authorize strikes against Kaiser Permanente, one of the largest nonprofit health plans in America, if no agreement is reached by the end of the month. The workers say that pay has not kept pace with inflation.
Notice how deep this particular, and we have seen this all over the country, how deep this particular strategy of class warfare works. They're not just lumping in Hollywood degenerates into the ranks and trying to pass them off as part of the ranks of the working class, but also healthcare and insurance workers, baristas. You're going to see it. Baristas are apparently working class now. Blue-haired, they-them baristas are apparently the backbone of the American economy. Blue-haired, fat, LGBTQ, CIA baristas have made America great again. That's what CNN wants you to believe. That is the lie that they continue to push. How many more members of the useless retail class, the parasite class, the laptop class, how many of them are they going to lump in with the real working class? Manufacturing, energy, agriculture, construction, transportation, industry. Enslave the rest of them. Useless. Put them in a labor camp. Have them break rocks to use for gravel, and then use the gravel to build a new road system in the country. We will have no more of these lies.
Inflation, and that understaffing has led to long wait times and neglect of patients. Last month, the 24,000 American Airlines flight attendants voted almost unanimously to authorize a strike if their contract demands are not met. And in August, 340,000 UPS drivers who had threatened to walk out scored a big contract gain. Labor unions are enjoying a resurgence in popularity with the public. Gallup recently found that 68% of Americans approve of labor unions. That's the highest number since 1965. But with income inequality growing, there's a question as to their effectiveness. And while all this activity has increased awareness.
There it is. Here's the part of the video that I want to get to. They bring on this expert, Scott Galloway, to talk about how whether or not unions are effective. So again, remember, so we're keeping in mind that 40% increase in pay number as we go into this next section, because we're going to dispel these lies after we're done playing this clip.
Awareness of union activity, the number of unionized workers in America has been on the decline for decades. Joining me now to talk about this is Scott Galloway, Professor G, the host of a great podcast and someone who has strong opinions about this subject. Scott, so you heard me sketch out the fine points of this. Union membership is in decline at a time when their popularity is growing. How do you see it? Are they the most effective means of dealing with these crises?
Good to be with you, Michael. You know, something I think every young professional needs to understand, and that is the distinction between being right and being effective. And I think it would be hard to argue that the union's intentions to restore dignity to the American worker and have a fair living wage, it'd be hard to argue why they aren't right. But the bottom line is they haven't been effective. Union membership's been cut in half. Of the 47 Western nations.
Fuck you, Scott Galloway. Put it in the chat whether or not you want to enslave Scott Galloway.
Have unions. 46 have seen union membership decline. It used to be 1 in 3 workers in the U.S. Now it's 1 in 10. In the auto industry, it's gone from 60% to 16%. So there's just no getting around it. The unions have been an ineffective construct. And despite the headlines of 330 Starbucks stores unionizing, not one of those 330 unionized stores has resulted in a collective bargaining agreement. In other words,
you see how deep this particular tactic of class warfare goes? They will lump in a Starbucks worker, a useless, essentially a bank teller, a coffee bank teller who produces nothing and only serves as a means to hand the professional managerial class a luxury service, a luxury latte that they will whip up for them in 3 minutes. That this useless individual is the same as a hardworking machine operator in a Ford factory working 50 plus hours a week with no overtime pay. Dreadful benefits that have been getting worse and worse as years go by, as he gets older and older. The same person who was represented in Oliver Anthony's song in Richmond, north of Richmond, who has been working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay, the song that 25 million Americans flocked to, the anthem that the working class flocked to, that person is the same as the fat blue-haired barista. And then blames the factory worker for the fault of the barista who can't form a union because they don't produce anything worth preserving. And so this idiot, this glasses-wearing, worthless huckster says that the inability of the fat blue-haired barista to unionize for collective gain means that the ability for the working class factory worker to unionize is also doomed to fail. When the two means of employment are entirely different. When the automotive industry in this country is single-handedly keeping the GDP rising, single-handedly keeping the economy afloat, as we saw back when Obama was forced to bail out GM almost 2 decades ago. Because to have that company go under would mean that the entire economy would collapse and never recover. It's not the same as Starbucks, a retail service who doesn't even make its profits from selling coffee. Selling you a New York hipster a coffee is just the means to pay rent for the building that is owned by Starbucks and whose value goes up as more traffic is driven to that particular brick and mortar store. That is the real means of profit for Starbucks, is rent, is owning the building. It's the same for McDonald's. McDonald's is not a business of hamburgers. It is a business of real estate. Real estate is not the same as manufacturing.
Words, it makes for a great headline, but the people on the front lines haven't seen their compensation move. So I would argue that unions, quite frankly, are a failed construct. Their intentions are noble and people support their intentions, but as a vehicle for registering or recognizing that those intentions, they just haven't worked.
Scott Galloway is paid to be this stupid, by the way. He writes books professionally to be able to mystify the origins of crises in our economy. He is paid to be this unambiguously stupid.
So what's the alternative? I have a poll question today that asks, what's the best mechanism for protecting the working class? And the choices that I offer are the federal government, the free market, and labor unions.
Well, the free market.
I forget this bald, creepy robot man's name. And I'm sorry I keep pausing the clip so much. We'll get to the end of this particular section. But I just want to point out how much I hate this guy. Not just because he looks like an alien, as if an alien were a pedophile, but because the choices that he offers in this poll, this blatantly manufactured poll of mechanisms for working class gains, what were they? The federal government, the free market, and unions. How clearly manufactured that is. It's the manufacturing of consent. We can only consent to one of the options given to us by these hucksters. Never once crossing his mind that working class dictatorship is one of the options, that forming a militant Marxist-Leninist party that represents the worker and is willing to fight for the gains of the worker, to disrupt the halls of Congress until the demands of the workers are met, to shut down the economy until the demands of the workers are met, to take to the streets in peaceful protest to get the word out that the demands of the factory workers must be met. Never once has it crossed his mind that this is an option, that this is the option, not just one option among many, the only option for working class gains. And he knows this. You can tell that he knows this from that smug grin that he gives when he lists off his three. Try not to get banned on YouTube here. His three regarded options that are just meant to lead you to his predetermined conclusion. A predetermined conclusion that they bring on Scott Galloway to confirm. And this is the reason I bring this. Pay attention to this next part of the clip for what his conclusion is.
Market, market dynamics will always trump individual performance, but when you just let the market take over, which the entrenched incumbents and corporations will urge, you end up with households where 1 in 5 households with children are in poverty. You end up with people living in their cars. You end up with child labor. So the marketplace is a key force here, but it's not enough. There are 2 former UAW presidents in prison because of corruption. There are thousands of unions. They don't coordinate. They're not effective. There should be one union in the United States, and it should be the federal government. And we should take minimum wage, and I'll propose this.
There should be one union in this country, the federal government. Let me repeat, there should be one union in this country, the federal government. Folks, if that doesn't sound like fascism to you, then you need to read a bit more history about the partnership between liberal government and private finance. But no, let's hear Scott Galloway justify this this blatantly fascist proposal.
$7.25 to where it would be if it had just been scaling or tracking productivity, somewhere around $23 or $25. Michael, can you think of any one move the federal government could make that would reduce childhood poverty, obesity, blood pressure, suicide, male abandonment, diabetes, poverty, homelessness, than raising the minimum wage? And the incumbents will argue that this would damage the economy. And what we have seen in studies out of Berkeley and UC Riverside is that when you raise the minimum wage, as they did in California, New York, and Washington, you not only don't lose jobs, you gain employment and the economy grows. Because the wonderful thing about lower and middle income households is that when you give them additional money, they spend it. So since 2009, the NASDAQ's up 6-fold, CEO pay is up 3-fold, and minimum wage is stuck at $7.25 an hour. There should be one union. The head of that union is Biden. $20 to $25 federally mandated minimum wage.
There should be one union, and the head of that union is Biden. Imagine it, folks. Joe Biden, the head of every union in America. Joe Biden, the man who made it illegal for railroad workers to strike. Joe Biden, who has brought inflation in this country to a level not seen since the 70s. Joe Biden, who is destroying industry in this country and is gearing up no industry except for the manufacturing of artillery, such as Stinger missiles in Ocala, Florida, or tank munitions in Texas. Joe Biden, the head of every union, the head of the single government union. Every worker in the United States is a government employee as Biden gears up for war with Taiwan. So every employee gets to be complicit in a wartime economy because every employee is now a government employee. The partnership between private industry, between private finance and government would be complete. If that is not the most fascistic thing you have ever heard in your life, if you do not think that Biden at this point is the most fascist president we've ever had, then you and I aren't on the same team. You and I are speaking different languages. We cannot be in the same room together because I do not trust you to not be a degenerate Nazi scumbag. So those are the justifications of the ruling class to bring about the union between Biden's government and private finance. So I want to return to that number that they were bringing up for those clips, 40% increase in wages that people will say over and over again will bankrupt the automotive industry. 40% increase seems like a big number. That's almost half. That's almost half of 100%. But and this is so clearly laid out by Marx in his essay, Value, Price, and Profit, one of his earlier essays. None of these neoliberal economic magicians and sorcerers can even come close to the level of Marxist analysis with whatever ratios that they're giving, whatever mumbo jumbo they're using to describe where economic gains come from, or 40% increases in this or that wage. It was laid out by Marx 150 years ago. 40% increase, decrease, it is an arbitrary number that even if it was 100%, a 200% increase in the wage, that does not get to how did we arrive at the realized price of labor, the price of labor being the wage. In this case, you have the realized price of labor for an automotive worker being, he said, 40% increase currently. That would be in the future be $80,000 per worker at one of these plants, and that seemed 80%. $80,000, 40% less than that. That's what they're making now, and that seems like a lot. But you compare that to the record number of profits that these automotive industries are pulling in, and how minuscule the wages of these workers is compared to the sum total of profits pulled in by Ford, by General Motors, by Chrysler. And then you see that, $80,000 per worker is a drop in the bucket. It should be more than that. Considering how much inflation has gone out of control, $80,000 is not that much above the median wage in the United States. That is barely breaking above the median. And even at the median level, Americans cannot afford rent. They cannot afford to pay off their credit card debt. They can't afford to have kids. But these people are making it seem like even aspiring to make $80,000 a year is unreasonable because it would bankrupt, these companies. It would bankrupt Ford. But will it bankrupt Ford? This is really the most disgusting lie that they tell, because to slander the working class for saying that demanding an increase in wage will bankrupt the companies they work for is provably false, especially for the real example of the Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford, who doubled the American wage because he increased the number of factory jobs in this country. He doubled the American wage single-handedly because he increased production, brought down the price of cars so that millions of Americans could suddenly afford to buy their first car. They got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and he just kept lowering the price because he could, because he wanted millions of people to own an automobile, because he knew the transformative power that it would have for average people to increase their production. He knew that the baseline, the absolute minimum cost of a car, came from the sum total of materials, transportation, and labor. And increasing the cost of labor wasn't necessary for him to do. He could have decided not to. All of his capitalist contemporaries at the time chose not to. In fact, many of them were deciding to lower the wage. Henry Ford doubled the wage. And not only did the price of cars plummet so that everyone could afford them, but he became one of the richest men in American history. The Ford family became the third wealthiest family in the country. So this is provably false. That, yes, when you increase the wage by 100%, that does not mean that not only did Ford not go out of business, but cars got cheaper. So to say to raise the wage 40%, less than half of 100%, if you can do basic arithmetic, we know that is a lie. It will not only not bankrupt Ford, if Ford factories do close, if workers do get laid off, it is the arbitrary decision of the factory owners, the private owners of collective labor, to arbitrarily fire 600 workers. And that's reported on as of yesterday. And this is at a Michigan assembly plant, one of the plants that was striking. CBS News reports that the Ford Motor Company announced just yesterday, on Friday, that approximately 600 workers at the Michigan assembly plant have been temporarily laid off amid the UAW strike. In a statement, the company says the workers laid off are at the plant's body construction department and south subassembly area of integrated stamping. So again, these weren't baristas. These weren't insurance salesmen. These weren't middle management workers at some retail chain. These people, these 600 human beings, worked to assemble the frames of cars. Without these 600 people, the cars that we drive around every day would not exist. The means that we use to get to work to increase our life expectancy and our productive value as laborers, we wouldn't have those things without these 600 people. And CBS News reports that those workers were instructed not to report to work on Friday. Quote, "Our production system is highly interconnected, which means the UAW's targeted strike strategy will have knock-on effects for facilities that are not directly targeted for a work stoppage. In this case, the strike at Michigan Assembly Plant's final assembly and paint departments has directly impacted the operations in other parts of the facility." And I want to point out here just how cowardly the mouthpieces in the media are when they point the finger at the strikers for negative economic blowback. When people like CNN, like CBS, like the spokesman of the Ford Motor Company, when they say that it's the strikers who are causing harm to the U.S. economy and not the owners of these companies who continue to drive up inflation, and not like Scott Galloway, these smoke and mirror, these snake oil salesmen, that they aren't responsible for the destruction of this economy, for misinforming American workers about where their levers of power come from, and convincing millions of people that it's their fault that congressmen are getting rich off of stock buybacks, that banks are putting millions in debt, that the average worker in this country can't afford health care because brokers in the healthcare industry are selling away the equipment that hospitals are using to cure the sick to increase their bonuses at the end of a quarter. Placing the blame on the working class and not on these parasites is unforgivable. So that's the United Auto Workers strike in a nutshell. We're going to close it out in a second here. I want to bring to light one last story here that I thought was exemplary of the direction that we're heading in this hemisphere. Because they are right. The spokesman of Ford is right that that production in the United States is interconnected. We are highly socialized as a nation in terms of labor. Highly organized, highly interconnected, as they said. So this also goes for the production the production line throughout North and South America. Automotives is this chain of production that links Mexico, the United States, and Canada. It's this artery that forms the backbone. I'm mixing metaphors here. It's this artery that keeps the lifeblood of the American economy flowing. And the other day, it was reported that in Colombia, again, because all of these commodities in the real economy are connected, just like labor is connected. Automotives, oil is the big one. Oil being the kingmaker of commodities in the 20th century, and still very important in the 21st century, considering the US dollar is backed by the price of oil. It was reported that in Colombia, cocaine is poised to surpass oil as Colombia's biggest export in 2023. So let's share the article here, because this is the trend that we're coming to in this hemisphere. Degrowth has reached such a level that cocaine is now rivaling oil. That industry is now being displaced by the drug economy, by black markets. And the article reads, cocaine is poised to surpass oil as Colombia's biggest export this year. All of this, by the way, all of the demand for consumption of cocaine in the United States. And the second highest demand in Brazil, right next door to Colombia. So yes, so even in the black markets, all of these things are interconnected. The article reads, cocaine is poised to overtake oil as Colombia's main export as soon as this year, partly thanks to the South American country's efforts to legalize the cocaine trade, according to Bloomberg's economic estimates. There's another means of class war of legalizing the cocaine trade. We've seen what this has done in cities in the United States, such as San Francisco, which has become an apocalyptic wasteland of drug addicts and homeless people roaming about the streets. The article goes on. Colombia's cocaine output surged to a record 1,738 tons last year, nearly double the 972 tons it produced in 2021, according to Bloomberg. Oil exports, meanwhile, have plunged 30% during the first half of this year. Bloomberg economist Felipe Hernandez said the increase in coca production could mean cocaine export revenues will jump to 18.2 billion in 2022, not far behind oil exports of 19.1 billion last year. The government is destroying laboratories where coca leaves are manufactured into cocaine, but that hasn't prevented production from expanding. And you see this. That is the one industry that is expanding in North and South America, is drug production. That's the one means of consumption that is expanding in the United States, is drug consumption. As despair takes hold of the population. That is the only plan of growing industry for banksters who are often the same people financing the cartels. That is their only plan of growth for 2023 and 2024, is expanding drug production. The article continues, as a result, the land in Colombia used to grow coca plants, whose leaves are used to make the highly addictive narcotic, increased by 13% last year. A report from the UN Office on Drugs and Crime published on Monday showed. Skipping through the article a bit here. Though Colombia also produces cash crops like pineapple and coffee, they take 16 months and 4 years, respectively, to harvest and are far more susceptible to climate challenges than coca plants, which can be harvested every 7 months. Just the wholesale replacement of entire chains of production with the drug economy. This is only going to get worse in the United States as well. We being the number one consumers of cocaine, of meth, of fentanyl. The banking elites who are shutting down factories in the United States and driving millions of people to despair and to use drugs are the same ones financing drug cartels in South America and using these private bank accounts to offer them to the kingpins of these drug cartels to store their money. This is an economic problem, which members of Congress are using as an excuse to make a security problem, that we should invade Mexico, that we should invade, we should send missiles and the army into Mexico to destroy the cartels. Colombia has the highest number of U.S. presence than any other South American country. And that has not decreased drug production. It has increased drug production. This is not a security issue. This is an economic issue. This is an issue that the working class in North and South America do not have the means to produce wealth for the country, to produce a real economy based on commodities that increase the life expectancy, automobiles, food, medicine, energy, housing. All of these things are contracting as drug production expands in order to solidify the monopoly of bankers, of deep state actors who are in the pockets of the banks. This is only going to get worse if we do not treat it like an economic problem of class warfare, from the ruling elites down towards the working class, a problem that could only be solved when we support the strikers, when we support specifically the United Autoworkers strikers. Fuck the baristas, fuck the Hollywood writers strikers, fuck those parasites. We support the right to strike for the working class, the people who produce real wealth in this country. That is the solution to the economic problem being foisted upon us by the likes of Biden and the Wall Street actors who are paying him and his fascist cronies. But I want to know what you think about this particular solution to the problem of class warfare in this country. We here at the Barracks are always looking to reach out and give a voice to people who want to be a part of this conversation. For now, that's the all of the clips that I wanted to share, and I thank you all for tuning in. As I'm flying solo, you're giving me the energy to keep going. Even when I'm coming off of a sickness, and even when I have to carry the show by myself, I do it because y'all keep me going. So make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe to the main YouTube page at the Barracks News. If you're watching from the other channels, subscribe to the main YouTube at the Barracks News. Make sure to go over to x.com and subscribe. We're starting to try and publish some articles now where we can. So make sure to follow us on X at the Barracks Live. You can follow us on Discord. You can see default TMC here in the comments trying to recruit people for the Discord. I salute you, sir, for your work. And yeah, we will see you tomorrow. Last announcement for the day. We will see you tomorrow. Milkman will be returning to close out the weekend with a theory stream, as I had used as a reference earlier in this stream, the essay "Value, Price, and Profit" by Karl Marx. We will be reviewing that essay because it is remarkably relevant to conversations going on to this day. No other so-called economist, no other so-called expert has ever come close to producing the level of clarity that Marxism has produced. Everything else is smoke and mirrors compared to dialectical materialism applied to economic and political science. So make sure to tune in tomorrow. We will be having that theory stream Sunday evening. We'll keep you posted on the exact time. But you can even read it in the meantime. It only takes 2 hours to read this essay. It's free online. Value, Price, and Profit. Remarkably elucidating. To be able to clear away the lies that Scott Galloway tells us that a 40% increase in the wage will bankrupt Ford. This has been disproven as a lie more than 150 years ago. So we hope to see you there, right here on the YouTube channel at the Barracks News on YouTube. But for now, we've been going for an hour and 15 minutes, and I just want to say thank you for tuning in. But that's all I got, and I'm out.